Good morning, good evening, or good night, folks. I'm your host, Simon Redhanded, and welcome back to Gaming Redhanded. And welcome to episode 1 of the Prepared Exile. I'm here to equip you with the essential tools to survive in Wraeclast one more day. In this series, I'm going to teach you how to navigate this game with just the tools available in-game, the information found in-game, how to make yourself a build of any skill gem you want to use, how to make sure it works, how to figure out early on if it's not going to pan out, and what you can do to adjust and make changes to help you kind of survive through the world of Wraeclast. I figured I'd start with a fresh character, made myself a ranger, as you can see here, and we're going to just start with what I usually do with a character that I have no idea what I'm going to build on with. I have done no research on Ranger whatsoever besides looking at the information that was provided by GGG. So that means I've looked at no other outside guides. I've just decided I like the Acendancy. Maybe I'll pick Pathfinder, maybe I'll pick Deadeye. I'm not quite sure yet. How am I going to go about doing that? Just arrived in Clearfell, and there's a few options I would change before I get to doing anything in game. Head over into options, head over to the game section, and I would consider removing gem cutter restriction, equipping restrictions, and that's because these options here kind of limit how you can build your character. Now, they're done as safeguards for completely new players, and if that's you, by all means keep these on. But if you're someone who, pretty good at kind of navigating these systems here, you might want to turn these off, because what it does is it disables your ability to buy gems that seem interesting to you, because it doesn't want you to equip it because maybe at the time you don't have enough dexterity, or you don't have enough strength, or maybe you don't have the right weapon equipped, and it might think that you're buying this by mistake. And I found it to be stifling in your build creativity, because to me, I'd rather purchase the gem and then adjust for what's missing, rather than being told that you can't buy it outright. It's kind of annoying that way. I would also consider heading over to the interface section right after that, scrolling down to the item section and making sure you turn on always show sockets, show full item descriptions, and support gem utility pop-up. That way you can always get maximum amount of information available about an item. You can easily identify if it's got a socket on it. You can easily identify if it has quality, because you turn down these options here and you can easily read these things. Next, there's a lot to do in the world, and sometimes you just want to get out there and just start killing. The game makes it easy to do that. There's a few things you need to understand. I know a lot of people see the classes and they think, hey, I'm playing a ranger, the ranger must use bow, mercenary must use crossbow, and these are not true at all. The way Path of Exile works when it comes to classes are very simple. Classes don't matter. And what I mean by that is they don't matter outside of being a quick reference guide to letting you know where on this massive atlas tree you're going to be starting off at. Now, there are 6 starting locations. How they're chosen is based on whether they're one of the 3 pure attribute classes or one of the 3 hybrid classes. And how this works is the pure dex user will start to the southeast, the pure strength user will start to the southwest, and the pure intelligence user will start to the north. Then when it comes to the hybrids, it's just in the middle of both. So a hybrid of intelligence and dexterity starts here to the northeast. The hybrid user of intelligence and strength will start here in the northwest, which in this game would be nothing. We don't have a hybrid strength and intelligence class just yet. Hybrid user of strength and dexterity starts out directly to the south. There's going to be 6 more classes to allow to double up on the starting locations, right? I think we already know what they are. I'm not going to go through them yet. When they come out, we'll expand and talk about them. Next, you'll have to understand the importance of classes beyond their starting locations or their ascendancy trees and what the ascendancy trees offer. Right now in early access, each class only has access to 2 of them. Right now I'm on the Rangers, so what I have access to is the Deadeye and the Pathfinder. I won't be going through the other ascendancies right now, but that is the long and short of the importance of classes. I know a lot of traditional games, when you play, say, a Diablo or a normal MMORPG and you pick a warrior, you think, well, the warrior must use these certain way. A warrior must play this certain way, and that's not the case here. In this game, here are the important things when it comes to you deciding a build in Path of Exile 2. And I break these into the 3 levels of difficulty when it comes to designing your own build. The beginner level of designing your own build is building around a skill gem you like. You see a cool skill, You decide you want to use that skill. You decide your build based on that skill alone. The intermediate level would be designing a build around an Ascendancy. And the reason why it's more difficult than just picking a skill is because when you look at an Ascendancy and you decide, you know what, I want to build around this specific Ascendancy, say Deadeye, then you need to look at the Ascendancy as a whole, read what the capabilities are, and be able to decide what skills are available from all the skill gems in the game to make it work with that Ascendancy, which is a bit more difficult to do than just building around a single skill. At this point, you're thinking about all the skills available to you. The advanced level of designing a build would be designing a build around a unique. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. Let me head over to my unique collection stash, and we're gonna pull out Painter's Servant. I found these gloves in Act 1 on my first character, and I immediately put in my stash because I'm going to be collecting one of each unique as I find them. One of my goals is going to be to find every unique in the game, solo self-found, but till that day, put this Painter's Servant in there because if you look at the effects, it says 33% of elemental damage converted to cold, 33% of elemental damage is converted to fire, and 33% of elemental damage is converted to lightning. These gloves effectively make you do tri-elemental damage. This is a very interesting set of gloves, but I don't really have a build in mind for this yet, but this is definitely an item that is so unique and interesting that you could design a build around this item specifically. The level doesn't matter. You can look at it and see, oh, it's only level item level 6. That doesn't matter at all. This effect is so unique that I'm pretty sure you won't find it anywhere else, and it's easily an interesting enough item that you could do an entire character around that. Figure out what skill would you use, how would you make use of tri-elemental, why would you want to do it, what Ascendancy can do it, and as you can see here, because the amount of theory crafting that can go into designing around an item itself, that's what makes it more advanced than just choosing an Ascendancy or choosing a skill gem, because you require even more knowledge of the game to make this work. Then finally, the expert level, which you really can't start doing now, and that's basically designing around a league mechanic. We have two remnant lead mechanics in the game right now that you could probably consider, which is Sanctum or Ultimatum, both of which are mechanics that are so unique that people do have builds for them, especially Forbidden Sanctum. Forbidden Sanctum has a no-hit item unique, which is probably one of the strongest uniques in the game, one of the strongest chase items, but it's very difficult to do. You get 1 point of honor, 1 point of health, and you have to go through and defeat the entirety of Sanctum with no relics on without being hit once. Very few builds can do this, and usually when people do these builds, they have to design an entire character around doing just this content. Since this is targeted towards brand new players who aren't veterans from Path of Exile 1, who are just like the rest of us trying to survive our way in Wraeclast, this guide is going to be around picking a skill gem, the beginner level, and designing a build around that. Now, you first get off the beach and you kill the miller, you're going to get yourself one of these uncut skill gems. You right click it, and it gives you access to skill gems that it wants you to use for your class. The first thing you're going to do is click all gems. This allows you to look at all the gems available for that tier. Now, you have to understand how gems are broken up in Path of Exile now. You can't just use any gem to buy any skill. You have to use the uncut gem that is for the corresponding tier. Now, if you take a look here, this eye here is the tier 1. As you get better skill gems, that tier goes up. Now, if you take a look here, I have some level 9s here, some level 2s, everything else I've used before, and this will correspond to what level skill gem you unlock. Now, if you don't have the skill when you use this, it'll give you the skill for free. If you already have the skill, it'll upgrade the skill to that level of whatever the gem is. So gems no longer get experience points like they did in Path of Exile 1. The way you level up skill gems is by finding higher level versions of uncut skill gems, or using the trade site to buy the higher level versions of these items, right? So right now it starts me off with a level 1 uncut skill gem, and this is where I want people to understand that you don't have to use the starting weapon they gave you. I'm a ranger, so of course they start with a bow and they throw me right into the bow window first, but if you want to use the quarterstaff and start with Killing Palm or Falling Thunder, you can do that too. This is where that initial restriction comes into place. Turn off these 2 sections here, and this is what will allow you to look at all the skills properly. So before it told me incorrect weapon type, but it blocked it out. Now, when I put that checkbox on, even though I still have the incorrect weapon type, it will let me still pick the skill, and I can go and build that way. Now, right now, we're missing the spear, the dagger, the flail, the axe, the sword. So we only have access to the bow, quarterstaff, occult skills, elemental, and we have access to the crossbow. So this is where it comes into you deciding how you're going to play based on gem that you find interesting. The class doesn't really matter, but you have to consider certain things. Any skill like this that's projectile based, that's bow based and all that, you're going to have to assume it starts off at the deck side. And what you're going to do here is this. Before you decide to pick a skill, sometimes people want to get right into the action. If you want to do that, just take the skill they gave you. But if you want to like use a ranger and decide, you know what I want to do? I want to play with a mace. Before I would buy these mace, I would look at the tags. So let's take a look at Rolling Slam. Say you're interested in using Rolling Slam as a character, as a skill gem to build around. The things you got to look at are the top line there. That's just under the skills. That's gray. That says AoE, melee, and slam. And then you look down to requires, and it tells you what weapon is necessary. And this, of course, requires a one-hand mace, two-hand mace, and the tags it has that you need to consider when it comes to scaling its damage are AoE, melee, and slam. Now, what you could do is you could click over it again, and you could click these things to read them yourself to see what they do. If you hold Alt, they stay active, and it'll allow you to read and look around and understand your character and its scaling a bit more in depth. You could also mouse over what's the descriptions of the skills here. Now it tells you what a slam is, it tells you what a stun is, it tells you what else these words mean. These are all key words that you need to understand when it comes to scaling your skills or understanding the interactions of your skill. And getting in the habit of clicking these underlined text anytime you find a new item, a new skill, a new term that you don't understand, and reading that subtext is a good habit to get into while you're playing this game, because that'll allow you to become a better player overall. Before I engrave this, I would have to look and say, well, I need a one-hand mace. Do I have a one-hand mace? Right now, I don't. Did I find one? No, I did not. But do I have one saved in my bag? No, I do not. Let's check the dump tab. I got a few, but these require 11 strength. Can I get to 11 strength? Not right now. So what I could do is open up my skill page next and look at what's around my starting area. Well, these nodes here, these attribute nodes, I could easily unlock Rolling Slam after getting 3 of these, or finding some pieces of armor, because that's going to give me 11 strength right off the bat. But early on, I don't have the strength requirement to use Rolling Slam. I could get there. It's going to take me a few levels, minimum level 5, well 4 I suppose, to get 15 points necessary to get to 11 to use a cheap mace. Is that worth it early game? That's up to you. Doesn't really matter. There's nothing telling you can't. The question becomes, why would you do that with this character? When you look at the starting area, this is what determines what you need to navigate out of. This tree is the same start for everybody in terms of you always start at the middle, but where direction you go into is determined based on the class you're starting off at. Now you see here, as I'm playing the pure dexterity class, I am starting off southeast, and this is my only place I can put my assigned skill. That means if I want to make it over to, say, any one-hand mace skills, is one-hand mace on this tree? I don't think it is. You know what? I'm just going to search maces, not one-hand mace. Now, that here, what I'm doing here is just searching this tree here, because as you see, there's a bunch of nodes here, and new players will open this up and get completely overwhelmed by this incredible atlas tree and try to figure out, where do I even start? Well, this is how you start. You first start with looking at the tags that you recognize on your skill to figure out, where can I path to find power for that skill? As you can see, maces, the first node that's highlighted is over here. First node that's highlighted is this cluster down here. So this is the main mace cluster. This is another mace tree, but this has the mace keyword in there, but this is only speaking about maces in the sense that you can dual wield two-handed maces. Right? So this is not going to give you power beyond you being able to use a second one to dual wield. Do you see any other mace nodes around here? No. So what would it take for you to be able to come out of this tree here and path yourself all the way down to this mace cluster? That would take quite a bit of points, because you would have to put a point in every one of these here and navigate all the way around just to make yourself get all the way down here. Now you could do it, but just scrolling out and looking at the distance, you'd be able to tell that this is going to take you roughly 30-40 points to get all the way down here. That's not to say you cannot use Rolling Thunder. Well, you can't use the Rolling Hammer on this character. It's to say that you would have to find a different method of scaling. mace nodes are not going to be the path. So what else can you do? Well, if you're using a one hand, we'll say one hand and look at that. Well, that's a bit different now. Now we have one hand nodes that are closer to this starting area. We have some one hand node clusters here, one hand and two hand melee accuracy nodes here. We have one hand nodes here for damage, so you could easily path this. You're starting here. You could get over here in about 20 points or so. Probably less than that. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points. Down here has another cluster for one hand melee. What's this over here? Dance with Death. 25% more skill speed while offhand is empty and you have a one-handed martial weapon equipped in your main hand. So you could also do this if you don't plan on using offhand. So you have more options for scaling now, and this is still a fair amount of damage over here where you can grab this cluster, and you wouldn't really be hurting for damage at that point. You'd be able to pick off your one-hand melee rolling hammer build. If you want to do two-hand, well, two-hand, you got a cluster over here. I reckon it'd be the same distance away as this one is, but you have a cluster right here. This is still the same accuracy cluster that you might be able to pick up if you decide you want to stick to melee, and that's it. So you only have those two clusters so you have one cluster for two-hand and two clusters for one hand. Now, what else could you look at? Well, it was also a slam. Do you have any slams on this side of the tree that you can scale? Well, we have this here, which is 10% chance to aftershock for slams. This is still in the mace cluster, which this would be a very strong node if you're using mace. You can't path over here, but what you can do is if you really want this node, you hold Alt. You see these nodes here. They come from Ultimatum, I believe. You can use these to anoint to get to these distilled. Actually, no, they come from Delirium now. Distilled emotions. This would allow you to anoint this node on your necklace so you could jump across and get this one that way. But for now, the only node on this tree that denotes slam is in the mace main cluster. So slams are out of the question for now in terms of the scaling path. What else can we look at? I believe Rolling Hammer had a physical tag. Let's go back and look at it again. It's melee. But we know that we go here to the sub tabs, it does physical damage because we know this is doing physical damage. Because if it wasn't doing physical damage, it would tell you here that it's doing something else. Like if you take a look at Volcanic Fissure, we know that Volcanic Fissure is not doing physical damage because it's telling you convert 60% of your physical damage to fire damage. That means that at 100% damage, 60% will be fire, while the other 40% will be physical. If it doesn't have a tag like that on there, you can assume that it's doing physical damage as its damage or whatever the weapon-based damage it is, right? If the weapon has some random element on it, it'll do that too. Now that we know that, we can also scale physical for Rolling Slam. If you're doing some other kind of conversion going on, like if you're using a gem that allows you to switch, like if you come into the stash here, I have a few gems here that I can look at. And if you're using a gem like Envenom, which hits enemies with a chance to kills have a 60% chance to poison on hit, you can scale the poison, right? If you wanted to use it on Rolling Slam. Like, I don't know if you do a poison Rolling Slam that's good or not. I'm not telling you it is. I'm just telling you that it would allow you to scale a different element of scaling if you put it on there. We know the weapon scales physical now. We scroll and look at physical. There's only one physical cluster here. There's another physical cluster down here, which is 40% increased physical damage, which is pretty strong, but it's also quite a journey. You could get down there, but you would have to plan that for around mid 50, level 50, maybe level 40 before you can even decide you're going to build around that. And because it's so far, how much power are you able to pick up along the way? Well, if you're doing the one-handers, you path yourself down here, pick up this cluster here, and then you'd make your way down here, have some power there. So it wouldn't be bad doing one-hander. Two-hander, same thing. A two-hander there, and now you're already down here. So now you can start considering, hey, maybe I do journey myself over here to get this cluster here. And you can see how you could kind of work your way towards doing melee Rolling Slam on a Ranger. Now, I'm not saying this is optimal and you should be doing that, but I'm saying that there's nothing preventing you from building around that. Let's go through some extra tips here that you could benefit from as a new player. First, we'll start off with understanding the loot. Now, loot is dropped in this game in 4 rarities, which is normal, which just comes in white, rare, magic, which comes in blue, rare, that comes in yellow, and unique, which comes in orange. You also have the other distinction, which would be sockets, as well as quality. When I come back from town, how I usually do my looting process as follows. All white items are used for gold. All blue items are disenchanted. They're disenchanted. All socketed items are salvaged, and unique items I save for now, but you can also sell them. Right. What I usually do is I come back from farming. I will talk to the hooded one. I identify all items I have on. I immediately go to the salvage table, click on the hammer, and it will highlight anything you could salvage. Now, this is when I take the time to actually look at these items. As I'm mousing over it, if I have a use for this item, full plate 2 sockets, I would use it this way. And I was like, you know what? I might keep this, right? Now, if this is later on in the game, I might actually keep this, but I'm not going to make use of a level 5 extract item with 2 sockets. So You hit it with the salvage hammer, and you'll get yourself artificer shards. If you had a quality item, you do the same thing. Salvage bench with salvage quality items if you're not going to use it, and you get yourself the whetstones, the blacksmith whetstones, or the armor scraps. Or if it's a magic weapon, you get the artificer's whetstones, and etc. etc. After you're done there, you'll head over to the disenchanter in town. In this town, it is Una. You talk to Una, and you'll disenchant. And basically, everything that can be disenchanted here will tell you what it sells for. Blue items will give you transmutation shards. Yellow items will give you the regal shards. The unique items will give you chance shards. Now, if it has 6 mods on them, it will give you 2. So you have full mods on it, will give you 2. Uniques will give you 2 also. And the importance of these are the basic curses allow you to craft, right? So transmutation orbs allow you to turn on an item that's normal to blue. Augmentation orbs allow you to add 1 additional prefix or suffix to a blue item. That regal orbs allow you to change blue items into yellow items, to rare items. Chaos orbs allow you to re-roll one of the mods. Val orbs allow you to add a corrupted implicit. Exalted orbs allow you to add another prefix or suffix to an item. Alchemy orb allows you to take a normal item and immediately upgrade it to yellow, to rare. We also have, I believe this is Divine Orb. Divine Orb rerolls the values, the min and max values. So you see it says 2 out of 3 and 5 out of 4 out of 5. It's not perfectly rolled. You could also roll this to see if you get 3 out of 3 and 5 out of 5. And then this is the Mirror of Calandra, which allows you to duplicate an item. Well, these are the quality items. So this would add quality to your Wander's Scepter. This will add quality to your armor. This will add quality to your weapon, a martial weapon. This will add quality. And then these are your socket, your lesser gem cutters, right? So this adds sockets to your skill gem. I think this one is for 3 sockets. This one's for 4 sockets. It's for 6 or 5 sockets and 6 sockets, right? Another tip is when you come back to town, make sure you check the vendors often. A lot of people struggle with finding damage and they don't recognize that the vendor is always selling good things you can use, right? And it sells it for gold. And what this game wants you to do is be constantly looking and checking it when you come back. What you should know is that every time you level up, there's stock resets. So every time you level up, if you're really struggling for gear, you can jump back in town and check this out. Now, see here, this has 46% spell damage plus $2 fire gems and gives you level 5 fire. This is an excellent leveling staff and it's 1,000 gold. So if you're struggling for damage, you pick this up and put it on. This is done. You could go further with this and hit it with the regal and try to do more with it, but this is enough to level your character up further, right? What else you can do here is when you come here, type in quality. There's no quality here. I would come over to Renly, check all these pages quickly first to see if I see any sockets. I don't see any sockets. Type in quality, no quality, no quality, no quality here. And this works in Act 1 where it's like if you see any quality or sockets here, it gives you the same number of scraps and the same number of currency back when you salvage. So it's worth buying because they get more expensive as you change act. Checking Renly every time you level up for quality items and socket items is a good way to get yourself some extra currency early on so you can prepare yourself for when you do need to add sockets to your gear. One thing to also keep in mind is that Una sells jewelry. Right now she doesn't have any, but every time you level up, make sure you check her to see if she has any jewelry on her. The first act, what you'll notice is that the majority of the monsters in the act will be using cold damage. That's giving you a hint that the final boss requires some resistance there. So you should make sure that you have at least 2 sapphire rings by the time you reach the first boss. But if you can't get 2, make sure that you have at least 1, and make sure that you have at least the Sapphire Charm, which gives you 25 cold resist if you take cold damage from a hit. One of the quests gives you a Thong Charm, which grants immunity if you are frozen. I would suggest when you see this charm, you take it, because this is a rare charm that you will have a harder time finding again. You will find plenty of these charms being offered to you, but this charm is make sure when the quest shows up and you see it, take this one first, then check the vendor and buy this one. And it's up to you to decide which one's easier for you to deal with. Finally, we're going to talk about navigating the world map. Good thing to keep in mind is that the world map shows you all your side objectives, whether or not you found the quest for it or not. As soon as you go into the zone, it'll put these images down, they'll be highlighted, and it will tell you whether or not you need to go into these in order to kill a boss or look for a certain quest item, right? And doing these is a good thing to do because you get permanent buffs. Most of the time in skill gems, some bosses give you, permanent increases in buffs and stuff like that. So getting used to navigating the world map is a good thing to do. So make sure that when you come onto the world map, every time you go to a new zone, make sure you check it to make sure you know what's there. And you can use this method to know when you can leave, A lot of these maps are massive, right? So you come into the map and you're like, oh, I'm in Clearfell Camp. What's in here? And you're like, oh, the only thing in here is Bira the Rotten Pack. Okay, I killed Bira. I can go to the Mud Burrow, or I can move on to the next zone. Now I'm in the Mud Burrow. What's in the Mud Burrow? Well, the Mud Burrow has this Devourer. So as soon as you define a Devourer and you kill him, you know you can leave. You don't have to explore the rest of this dungeon. That's gonna be it for episode 1. We're gonna keep this series going. Like, come for the next episode here, we're gonna have some progress on this character. If I had any hurdles, I'll discuss it with you guys and tell you how I went about adjusting it. We're also gonna tell you what changes I made and what problems I found and how I addressed them. So if I'm having trouble staying alive, if I'm dying a lot, if I'm getting surrounded by enemies and I can't figure out how to deal with it, I'm gonna tell you how to navigate all of these things. So that way, if you're making your own build, these are things that you can look at and consider for you to figure out what you can do next to solve some of the defensive layer issues that you might be having with your character. That's going to be it for today, guys. Have yourself a good morning. And if it's the only video watching me today, a good afternoon or good night.